Welcome. You're dialed into the Acoustics podcast, connecting you to the newsmakers and innovators that are changing the way the world experiences the art of music and movies. Now on with the show.
And good evening and welcome to episode 2 of the Acoustics podcast. I'm your host, Ian White, Acoustics editor-in-chief. Joining me today from sunny California, where they don't have to wear masks anymore, unlike New Jersey, Brian Mitchell. Good afternoon, Brian.
Hi, Ian. It's going to be a big one. We got a lot to talk about today, and I'm excited to be here.
And before we get started this week on the program, just a quick shout out to our new sponsor, Samsung, and for their wonderful Q9U microphones that I'm using this week on the podcast. Today is the day after, and no, we're not referring to the 1980s nuclear Holocaust movie, but it is the day after Apple announced its brand new Apple Music Lossless platform. And for those who have not been paying attention, Apple announced yesterday on May the 17th that starting in June, Apple will be offering a lossless tier as part of Apple Music. To start, I believe it's going to be either the first week of June or the second. Apple's going to be making 20 million tracks available on Apple Music in the lossless format. So they'll be 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz, and that they're promising to have the entire catalog of music available on Apple Music, which I think is about 75 million songs available in lossless by the end of 2021. Now, Brian, the other thing that's interesting about Apple's announcement yesterday in regard to Apple Music lossless is that they will be implementing a high-res sort of component to all this. There weren't too many details yesterday, really in their press release. There was just a mention that high-res streaming eats up a lot of data, and that's something we'll get to in a few minutes. The other two parts of the press release indicated that the new Apple Music lossless tier is going to support Dolby Atmos and also spatial audio. People who are really big into the home theater space obviously will recognize Dolby Atmos and how that might sort of impact, the way music is listened to at home, assuming you actually have a Dolby Atmos surround system. But spatial audio is sort of a newer technology that has really been worked on primarily, I guess, by Sony, Brian. And I think that, it'll be interesting to see how many consumers really have an opportunity to even try that at this point. But I think, Sony is kind of, hoping that, Apple and themselves will release enough new products in the next few years that becomes a thing for people in regard to music playback. I think the other thing that was really significant with the Apple announcement was the price. We've been writing for the last few months, in regard to Spotify Hi-Fi, Qobuz, Tidal, Deezer, and Amazon Music HD, that one of the things that was going to be a key for any of these streaming platforms was going to be the price. Anyone who thinks that digital streaming isn't price sensitive really has not paid attention to the market very closely in the last 5 years. Spotify did not get to 160, 170 million paid premium subscribers around the globe, by charging $20 a month. Which has really become the standard price for, Tidal and Qobuz. The other thing that Apple announced that was kind of interesting and I think smart from a marketing perspective is that they included it in a new bundle called Apple One. If you're already an existing Apple customer, Apple is offering a new sort of, app tier that includes, really Apple Music. It includes Apple Arcade. It includes more access to Apple iCloud in terms of, you can, change the size of your iCloud. Also, Apple has sort of included a number of other, goodies into the package to really make Apple TV 4K more appealing to people. And, I don't think any of the other streaming platforms could offer anything like this. I mean, clearly, Tidal and Qobuz don't have the ability to offer things like Apple TV 4K and Apple Fitness Plus and Apple Arcade. So, Apple has obviously unveiled a very, very appealing package. The other most obvious thing is that Apple has hundreds of millions of customers around the globe. And I think, that's why you have to look at Apple Music from, the opening bell as really Spotify's only real competitor at this point. Amazon Music HD might have 50 or 60 million, paying subscribers. But I mean, Apple sells, more hardware in a week than the high-end audio community sells probably in 3 or 4 months. I mean, combined. So, I mean, Apple has a real advantage, sort of at this point. Brian, what do you think?
Well, yeah, let's back up and kind of start at the beginning. What did Apple really announce? So they announced Apple Lossless. Okay, what is lossless? Most people probably don't know what lossless audio is. And this is really a it's really just saying CD quality.
Right.
So if you think of a line with CD quality right in the middle, split in half, we've been on the lower side of that line with MP3 quality for the last 20 years. Okay. Right. Now we're getting to the middle of this line and we're crossing over that into what is the next step up from lossless is called high res audio. And Apple is putting both new audio, I wouldn't call them audio formats, they're audio
codecs almost.
Yeah, they're audio codecs that give you larger file sizes, higher bit rates, more data of the music is revealed. Whereas prior to that, what was happening is to make the file sizes smaller, bits of data were being thrown out that the codecs deemed you couldn't hear anyways. So now all this data, all of the recording of the music is now being restored for people to hear. So we're getting back to CD quality and higher than that. So that's kind of where we are. This technology has existed. It's just really only been for audiophiles that kind of knew how to seek it out. Super Audio CD, known as SACD format, was one of the early attempts to get to high-res audio all the way back in 1999. And then what happened is the iPod came out in, I want to say 2001 or 2, and all the consumers shifted to convenience. They didn't care about quality anymore. Everybody shifted to, I want songs in my pocket. I want songs to go. And that was the beginning of the digital download era. And from that point, almost 20 years, we've been in this I would call it low quality audio time. How would you describe or?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, look, Spotify announced Spotify Hi-Fi, but now the ball is clearly in their court. They have to launch. I think Spotify now is under a lot of pressure. People will say, well, they have 300 million subscribers. They're under no pressure. Actually, I would say Apple actually did a really smart thing, both on the business end, but also on the marketing end, because Apple is now saying to Spotify, you might have more actual paying customers than us at this point, but we have a better sounding platform. And for a lot of people, I think Apple also did it because when Spotify Hi-Fi announced that it was coming with Billie Eilish a few months ago, doing that really clever, press conference, Apple probably said, we better get, because Apple, here's the thing that people don't understand. Apple essentially has had 16-bit or higher masters of almost all the music available since inception. So it's not that Apple has not been able to offer 16-bit or higher for many, many years. It's the fact that Apple basically came to the realization that, number one, and it's even mentioned in yesterday's press release. I mean, if you look in the disclaimer, if you go on apple.com and you go to that specific section about Apple Music, they warn you that switching from what you're using now on your Apple Music account to lossless or even high-res lossless is going to eat up a lot more bandwidth and data. And so they're warning customers in advance, oh, by the way, if you don't have a specific, unlimited data plan with, Verizon or AT&T or Sprint, or up in Canada, I guess with Rogers or Bell, whatever it is now, you're going to get a weird looking bill at the end of the month of, if you stream 2 or 3 hours a day. Those of us who use Tidal and Qobuz, I use Tidal and Qobuz 4 or 5 hours a day, but I use it at home using Wi-Fi or using, Apple AirPlay to various devices in my house. I'm not using bandwidth. And I'll tell you something, when I used to drive commute from New Jersey to DC, and I used to stream Tidal on my iPhone to my car stereo. My bills got really, really large until I got a much better plan. So I think there's a lot of consumers who will hesitate after a while if their bills go up. They'll be like, why am I paying all this extra money every month, if I really don't even hear the difference? Now, I think, the big thing is, will people hear the difference?
Yep.
Brian, you and I are in a very different place. You and I have been audiophiles for most of our lives, going back to probably our teenage years. And, we adopted platforms like Tidal and Qobuz at inception. I've been a paying Tidal customer now for 6 years. That's hard to believe, but that's true. I've been using Qobuz since day one here in North America. They launched a little over 2 years ago. I'm unwilling to go back to anything but 16-bit, or high res, because quite frankly, I already have the CDs to begin with. So why would I accept a lower quality stream than the CDs that I've been listening to for the last 20 plus years? So I'm prepared to pay that $20 a month. However,
now you only have to pay $9.99 if you go with Apple Music.
Right. And that's sort of and that doesn't even address the amount of music that the various platforms have. But, but just sticking with the two audiophile platforms for a second, Tidal introduced MQA into their sort of, streaming platform a number of years ago. And MQA is definitely controversial, both in the audiophile world and, most consumers have never heard of MQA. Most consumers would probably go on Tidal and see that, Tidal has something called the Tidal Master Series, which essentially are, the highest quality, master versions of all those specific recorded albums. And the question is, number one, unless you have a DAC, which is a digital to analog converter, which most of the most of the mainstream consumers do not own or even know what that is, unless you have a DAC, you're not able to actually stream music with MQA sort of, initiated, in the process of doing an unfold, and rendering of an MQA stream. So, if audiophiles are sort of conflicted about the value of MQA, and when we're listening to, Tidal and Qobuz through DACs that cost thousands of dollars in many cases, why would the average person listening to streaming on their cell phone suddenly shell out all this extra money to buy a DAC if they don't even know what the benefit is? So I think the industry still has a lot of work to do on that front.
Let me jump in real quick. The biggest part of this Apple announcement is there was no flagship product that Apple announced to be able to hear this new higher fidelity audio format on.
Bingo. I think that was the one thing yesterday that really, when I was writing up the news, that really kind of, as I went through it a couple of times, I'm thinking to myself, Bluetooth doesn't support high res streaming. So how are like the AirPods Max and and the Pro, how are they going to support high res? They can't.
Right. So you'll still be able to hear the music. It'll just be essentially down converted to whatever the ceiling is of the lower fidelity. How would I describe this?
Well, it would essentially be, 16-bit 44 would be, that's what it would max out at.
Well, you would get even less if it was over Bluetooth, because Bluetooth has to compress the audio even more to get it over wireless. So if you're connecting Bluetooth wireless headphones, you may be getting the stream from Apple Music as a lossless stream, but by the time you hear it in your headphones, it's been, I guess, transcoded into a slightly degraded standard.
A standard CD Redbook, I guess, track is what, 1300 to 1400 kilobits per second?
Right.
And, Bluetooth aptX HD maxes out at what, 900 to 1000 kilobits per second? I don't even think it's even that high.
I think it's a little lower. Yeah.
Right. So you're really not even getting a true 16-bit 44 CD quality stream. And Apple kind of, it's funny, the devil is always in the details with these things. And like yesterday, the page that I went to first was the thing that when you scroll down through a press release and there's like 17 disclaimer points, and we actually have it in our story because there were so many disclaimer points yesterday. Apple points out that, you might need a external third-party DAC in order to enjoy high-res audio lossless, through Apple Music. So right there, they're telling you that, oh, by the way, you're not done yet. You have to buy something else.
I don't think most people know, but that little lightning adapter that takes your lightning output on your iPhone and has a headphone jack on it, that's actually a miniature DAC in it. And that's the way you get the audio out of your phone into what used to be regular headphones, but you could plug in. It is regular headphone connection, but you could also use that headphone jack to plug into another audio device. It doesn't have to be headphones.
Right. And it's like, if I look at my existing iPhone, I'm running a Lightning to USB adapter, from the phone into an external dongle DAC. And you can look on our website to look up dongle DACs. There's some really, really good ones now under $300 from AudioQuest, THX, Helm Audio, Stella. It's almost an endless list now. There's so many dongle DACs, it's hard to keep track of them. I think I have 9 on my desk right now. I'm sort of struggling to decide which one I actually like the most. But consumers don't understand that, you just don't, get high res audio. Like it doesn't just appear out of in midair. You actually have to have the hardware aside from just your cell phone or your laptop or your iPad, or, even like whether if you don't use Apple products, if you're using an Android phone, you have to have all this other third-party hardware to experience high res. And, I think that, a lot of consumers are going to see the $9.95 price tag for Apple Music and get all excited, and they'll listen to music because basically, there's no upcharge. Apple's not charging you a penny more, and they'll listen to music in CD, CD Red Book quality, and they'll say, okay, it sounds good. I don't hear that big of a difference between this and what I've been listening to before. There's a lot of excitement about this. And I think, a lot of companies who make, wireless speakers and wireless headphones and DACs get very excited because, when you see Apple jump into something, the mass tends to follow. But at the end of the day, it's not just, using a new music service. Those of us who use Tidal and Qobuz, we still have to buy extra hardware, to really, feel the benefit, hear the benefit, of those platforms. I gladly pay every month for Qobuz and Tidal, but, I think that's the other issue we have to talk about right now is that how does Apple's announcement and also the announcement later in the day, and this,
Yeah, this was very suspicious. I think it was almost exactly at the same time. Amazon Music HD, which is the competitor to Apple Music, or Amazon Music HD was the premium version of Amazon Music. These names get pretty mixed up, but Amazon lowered their price at the exact same moment Apple Music announced. So they matched their price.
I think, it obviously puts the ball in Spotify's court because, Spotify is the 800-pound gorilla in the streaming world. Right. And now it's almost like I'm waiting for either Friday or Monday, to be the announcement from Spotify that Spotify Hi-Fi will be available on June 1st. And then this will be the price. And we've all been speculating in the audio press, will Spotify actually include high res, or do they feel that their customer base doesn't really care? And they're more interested really in expansion into other markets. Tidal and Qobuz represent such a tiny percent of the market that really, high res for them isn't worthwhile. And, they'd rather focus on, like the fact that Spotify just, a couple months ago announced the new product for cars. Spotify is coming to your car via a device that you have to buy from them. And, I think they're more interested in that than trying to get their customer base to pay them an extra $2 or $3 a month for high res audio music that they don't necessarily even have or even care about streaming to their customer base. And then you have like these other streaming platforms that are actually a lot bigger than Tidal and Qobuz. Deezer, we know, which is based out of France. They have significantly more customers than Tidal or Qobuz. And then you have the Chinese streaming platform, Tencent, which I believe as of like a few months ago, they were up to 42 or 43 million paying subscribers. And then Google YouTube. I mean, like we haven't even mentioned Google and YouTube. I mean, YouTube claims to have 1 billion users. And then if you dig a little deeper into their numbers, they have 20 million paying subscribers, for YouTube Music. That's also a lot bigger, than Tidal or Qobuz combined. So at this point, it's not a question of whether or not, lossless streaming is going to be adopted by the masses. I mean, between Apple, Amazon, and Spotify, you're at 95% of the market right there. I mean,
right. It'll be the new default. Like you won't have to opt into it, although you do have to go into your phone settings and say on your iPhone that you do want lossless audio. That was another part of the announcement. You do have to opt into it. It doesn't just automatically happen if you are an Apple Music customer. That was part of it. The other thing is all of these digital music files the same, regardless of which platform they're on. If they're all high res masters, are they all getting the exact same file and they're just doing it through a different distribution network? I don't know. Like, I think they're all the same. I don't think they would be making a version specific for Apple and a version specific for Spotify.
Right. I mean, Apple started collecting masters years ago. I remember years ago, I asked, I remember this conversation. Gordon Rankin, who is the owner of Wavelength Audio, but also the very, very talented guy who designed the Dragonfly series for AudioQuest. And I asked him many, many years ago, my God, this may have been even like 8 or 9 years ago, why has Apple not made lossless music available yet on iTunes? Like, it just seems like, even like with downloads, I mean, streaming wasn't even really a thing. Why hasn't Apple made, lossless downloads a thing? And he's basically like, well, number one, it takes up a lot of space. I mean, if you have, 75 million songs, that takes up a lot of space, but also, do consumers want to have to download such large files on their mobile devices? And number two, do they want to pay for it? I mean, it's like it's people kind of forget that this is all wrapped up in cost. I mean, consumers will basically make a choice. I think we're the anomaly. The audiophiles are the anomaly. Most consumers don't have 3 or 4 streaming platforms on their phone. They pick one. I mean, my own kids who have iPhones, and I have 3 kids who have phones. One of them uses Spotify. One of them uses a combination of Spotify and YouTube for the videos. And another kid basically just uses my wife's Amazon Music account because she has Prime. And I'm the only person in the house who has Spotify, Apple, Qobuz, Tidal, Deezer, but that's because of professional reasons. Because, I need access to all these platforms to try them with various devices. I don't even think I represent 1% of the market in that regard. So it's kind of like consumers are going to pick one. And I think, the last point I want to touch on is the fact that what are Tidal and Qobuz going to do to differentiate themselves, to remain viable for the long term? I mean, Tidal was recently purchased by Jack Dorsey, the guy who owns Twitter. His company Square paid an exorbitant, I'm going to use that
300 something million, I think.
I think it was like $297 million
for
Tidal. And I was shocked at that number because I don't think Tidal even has 5 million subscribers. I mean, I might be wrong, but Tidal stopped sharing their subscriber numbers many years ago. It's not like they just last year clammed up during COVID and decided, well, we don't have any numbers. Tidal hasn't shared their actual subscription base for many years. So, that was, I thought, a crazy amount of money to spend on that platform, but there's a reason. So Jack Dorsey has access to obviously a lot of money.
Well, and he owns Square. That's the big reason.
Right. And and they're in basically the purchase business. They want transactions. They make money on transactions. So I feel like Tidal is going to essentially become a way, and I think this is maybe better for Tidal because they've always paid artists the most for their streams. I think Tidal's point of differentiation with the other platforms is that they pay artists the most, for the streams. Tidal's in a position to basically say, well, we're going to start selling your merchandise on Tidal. We're going to sell concert tickets through Tidal. We're going to sell exclusive content through Tidal. And you, the artist, is going to make more money. No musician is going to say no to that. I mean, especially coming out of a year where there was no live music on the planet and these people haven't toured in 14 months. Artists are going to say, hell yes. I mean, I need to sell like millions of t-shirts and I need to sell,
Right.
anything I can with my brand on it. Tidal also recently did a deal with LG. And people will say, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, LG sells millions of televisions every single year around the globe. And if you want to increase your subscriber base, people spent a lot of time in the last 14 months in front of their TVs. And if you go on your LG TV and all of a sudden you see Tidal and you don't know what Tidal is, and you kind of have an opportunity to maybe even get like a free trial subscription on your LG TV, you might actually decide to use it. I mean, for Tidal, it was a no-brainer. I mean, you're being put in front of millions of people. And
now people have to understand lossless, high-res audio. And then within high-res audio, there's these numbers you'll hear, 24-bit, 192. You'll just hear these numbers that are meaningless to most people. And then you'll hear MQA. And you'll be like, I don't know what that is. So how does the average consumer who just wants the best quality sound they can get, how do they decipher all this? And who makes it simple? Who makes it the most convenient? That's who's going to win.
Right. And also price. And I think, for Qobuz, Qobuz just did, a partnership with Sonos, which I think was a very smart move because Sonos sells a lot of hardware. And I think, giving people, making things like, lowering the barrier to entry is a very smart move when you're a small streaming platform, because the more, eyes and ears that you can get in front of is obviously going to be beneficial for you in terms of growing a base. Qobuz for me, its main advantage is the fact that I just think it sounds the best. If consumers want to know which streaming platform, in my opinion, sounds the best for the music that I enjoy, I'll pick Qobuz 99 times out of 100. And I have over time kind of soured a little bit on Tidal because of the fact, and I don't like the fact that Tidal essentially has now announced that they're raising the price on the MQA tier. I think, that was kind of a weird move at a time when Apple and Spotify and Amazon are cutting the price. I think saying to people, oh, by the way, if you want to enjoy audiophile quality high-res music, oh, by the way, that's an extra $6.
Right.
I think that is just pure marketing stupidity. As soon as I read that, I was like, maybe I won't be maintaining my Tidal membership subscription.
Right. Well, they haven't announced it in the US yet. It's been an Australian announcement, I think.
Right.
They haven't made it official, so maybe they won't. Maybe they're just testing it in Australia. But it seems like Tidal will be forced to lower their price. Qobuz is going to have to lower their price. I don't think they can last by charging a $5 to $10 premium over what Apple Music offers.
Right. Well, just for the simple fact there aren't enough audiophiles in the world to make it sustainable. Like if Apple wasn't doing lossless and Spotify weren't doing lossless, they still had a monumental hill to climb. In terms of and Sonos and Tidal are growing into many more markets. So it's not like Tidal and Qobuz are not growing their base outside of the traditional audiophile world.
But it's still relatively small compared to Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon. If you combine those numbers, they're around 500 million paying subscribers, I think.
Spotify probably has 150 to 175 million paid premium customers right now and 300 million users.
Okay.
I think Apple has, because Apple's sort of thing is really that you really have to pay. So Apple, I think the latest data I saw on Apple is that Apple's probably closer to 80 million paid subscribers and Amazon's over 50 million. So yeah, I mean, between the two, 130. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's about 300 million people in the world who will be paying for some form of streaming. Okay, so that's 300 million. I don't even think that Tidal and Qobuz combined are even 6 or 7 million customers.
Right. So we're talking a very small percentage of the audiophile community.
Right.
Are
paying. Right. You know what? If Apple Lossless and Spotify Hi-Fi and Amazon Music HD, convince 100, 200,000 people a year or more to jump into high-end audio, then that is nothing but a positive for the industry. But at the end of the day, you also have to make the barrier to entry both affordable and easy. I mean, if you start throwing things at people like me, I just thought it was so funny when I went through the Apple thing. I'll repeat this again. Apple mentions in italics at the very bottom of their press release, to enjoy high res, you need to go out and buy a third party external high definition, a high res DAC. And I'm sure people kind of read that and said,
no one knows what that is.
Yeah, what the F is a DAC? And as you pointed out, they didn't launch. I mean, the speculation going into Monday was that Apple was going to announce a new pair of headphones, a new pair of AirPods that would support lossless and high res, sort of like, and that it would be like like the dream product for people who want to hear their music better. And they didn't do that. And then to add insult to injury, you find out the next day that Apple's $500 headphones don't even support high res.
Their new AirPod Max you're talking about.
Yeah, you're right. They don't. So I have a friend in Israel who's a very well-known blogger, Hillel Fuld. I'm going to totally name drop here because he's the number one tech blogger in Israel. And he is absolutely one of the biggest Apple fanboys in the world. And he's a lovely guy and I love him. But he and I go back and forth on social media all the time about Apple products. And I keep telling him, for a guy who's a tech blogger, you really need to get yourself a pair of proper high-end headphones and a dongle DAC because he loves music, this guy. I said, you really need a proper pair of headphones and a dongle DAC so you can experience high res. And I'm sure he probably read our story yesterday and was like, wait a second, these $500 headphones don't even work with high res audio? Like, what the hell? So I just think that, this is a topic that we're going to get into in another ecoustics group podcast, probably in June. But I think that the next couple months, maybe not months, next couple of weeks in the digital music streaming world are going to be very, very important. And I think they're going to sort of create an interesting path forward for the audio industry in regard to the type of products they're going to have to offer.
Yeah, this is 20 years in the making. Like audiophiles have been waiting for this for 20 years. Like, when would Apple do this? They could have done it 20 years ago. They finally did it. We're very happy that they have. Amazon's doing it. It's just an exciting time for the high-end audio industry and the audio industry as a whole. That there's a lot to look forward to. Audio is getting better, and that's really the bottom line.
This is a great opportunity for the audio industry. Audio companies now have to take advantage of this kind of, this hot potato. People are talking about streaming and lossless audio. And I mean, they're never going to get a better opportunity to kind of get their products in front of people. And of course, the cruel irony of all this would be if Tidal and Qobuz got crushed in the process. Because I mean, imagine, Apple finally goes into this and Spotify goes into this and Amazon, and the two casualties are the two streaming platforms that have championed better sound quality now for almost a decade. I mean, that would almost be like a cruel side of all of this.
Yeah. What's interesting is it just seems like Apple flips a switch and all of a sudden they have it, and Amazon has had it. So apparently these digital files are out there. That I don't know what took them so long, other than they need a product that goes with Apple that you can say you can experience your HomePod in spatial audio lossless fidelity.
That's a
right?
that's a whole other show, spatial audio. And
right.
actually, I'm hoping that on a future show we can get our friend Chris Boylan from Big Picture Big Sound on the program with us to talk about sort of what's going on in the home theater world and sort of, multi-channel audio and multi-channel, obviously home theater, Dolby Atmos, DTS-X. I think that would make for a very fun show. It'd be good to have Chris on. I want to thank everyone for listening this week to episode 2 of the Ecoustics podcast. I'm your host, Ian White, editor-in-chief of ecoustics.com. Joining me this evening was Ecoustics CEO and publisher Brian Mitchell from California. We have a great podcast coming up in the next couple of weeks with 2 very important music industry luminaries who are doing unbelievable things right now with a specific jazz label that I know you're going to want to hear about. But until then, have a great week.
You've been listening to the Ecoustics Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe and comment. The Ecoustics Podcast is produced by Mitch Anderson of Black Circle Studios. Original music by The Ark of All. Voiceover provided by Todd Harrell of SSP Unlimited. As always, get up-to-the-minute news and product reviews at www.ecoustics.com. Until next time, keep listening and stay hi-fi.